We'll call the commission meeting on November 21st to order. First item is roll call. Let the record show all three commissioners are present. On our advisory committee announcements, the only advisory committee meeting in December is going to be the Marine Advisory Committee on December 12th at 6 o'clock here in this room. There will be a technical advisory committee, the TAC. It will be January 11th at the ARF building at 9 a.m. And the BIAC, the Bellingham International Airport Advisory Committee, on January 11th, same day at 5 p.m. And the public's welcome to all of those meetings. So our first item is public comment. And we only have one person signed up. We're going to have two public comments. We're actually going to have three, one now, one at 5:30, and then we will have a public hearing on our budget meeting, and that will be public comment as well. So if you want to comment on the public hearing on the budget, that's a different sign up than the one for public comment. So we have one here and two back there for later. And so we have one person signed up, and it's Jeff Haagendas. If you could come to the podium, please.
Thank you, Jeff Hedgedis, 900 Donovan in Bellingham. And I just wanted to come by tonight and say congratulations to the commission and your staff and your partners for achieving the milestone last week of the groundbreaking of Laurel and Granary Avenues down at the waterfront. That is a huge accomplishment in only 3+ years since the sub-area plan was approved. You know, the planning and the engineering and the funding and then the details of the contracting and the implementation, that is very quick, very fast. And the work in addition to that, for example, that road wouldn't even be going in without the bunker oil cleanup right under Granary Avenue that got so well taken care of. And that's my day job. I know those things don't happen by accident. I went up to the top of the Granary building last week, a quality piece of work by your partner, Harcourt. It exceeded my expectations. I've been watching the outside, and Louis finally let me sneak in, and I was astounded. It's a beautiful building. I chaired your waterfront advisory group when the sub-area plan was approved, and when the public wanted adaptive reuse of that building. I had no idea it would come out so nice, let alone be right next to a park that we're breaking ground on this month, with a beach in it, you know, with art made out of the iconic structure, the accumulator, you know, the gas ball, right, that we're making art of. I see the digesters, I see the chipper left. We demoed around those. You guys, that was amazing. I lived in Ketchikan for a year and managed to clean up in the demo at that mill when they shut it down. We imploded the digester building and just cut up those tanks. And what we're doing here, I was there when we knocked them down. It was fabulous. You know, that level of effort is uncommon. We should be very proud and excited by it. You know, right next to the Whatcom Waterway, a $32 million cleanup that never would have happened if the port had not acquired that site. This is my day job. I know about this. Not only did we clean that up, working waterfront right next door, new docks, new bulkheads, new uplands, you know, facilities, new pilings. That was a mess, and it's ready for accelerated working waterfront, evidenced by All-American Marine. I had a tour of that facility. I was on the Salish Explorer the week before it launched, and I was astounded by the inside of that building, by the employment, by the people, just their number of welders. They're, I think, hiring just welders. They have like 70 people now working there. And that site's a cap for a landfill. You know, look at R.G. Haley's, right? Go to Cornwall. Look at iTech Energy, solar panels, what that's doing, changing Cornwall. It's commercializing that whole area. There's so much good work going on, and I know we have to open up the sub-area plan because we changed the roads. For good reason, we changed the roads. But what I want to say is that, you know, the work is it's just getting closer and closer to everything that we wanted. It's not easy, okay? But we can find a way right, to make the park accommodate now, the view corridors and the transportation access. We can, get in there and decide what to do with the lagoon. I chaired the Marine Advisory Committee when we did the 30% design on that. And yes, it's expensive because we're rolling the cleanup into the cost of the marina. The people with boats can't pay for the cleanup with their mortgage fee. That's why it's expensive. Is it a normal accounting principle to roll the cleanup fee into that service? I don't know. But I think we can figure that out, in the next half year before April. So I'm really looking forward to seeing the work that you and your staff and your partners come up with. But I want to say I have a lot of faith in where it's going, and I'm really excited by it. Thank you.
Jeff, thank you. I disregarded the bell because you can talk like that as long as you want.
Geez, thank you, Dan. Oh, watch out. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Really appreciate it. So with that in mind, our next, is there anyone that didn't get a chance to sign up that missed it? Great. So our next item is our consent agenda. If you could, please, Diane.
A motion to approve consent agenda items A through H.
Okay, gentlemen, any comments on the consent agenda? Commissioner Briscoe?
Yeah, we're looking at computers those new guys are going to get. No, I'm good with it, thanks.
I have no.
I have none either. Hearing none, all those in favor?
All right,
Aye. The records show that that passes 3-0.
The answer though, Bobby, I think it's this.
they're getting one of those.
It comes with stickers.
No, they get the one without the
I
stickers.
hope it comes without.
I'll take stickers off of them.
You got plenty of stickers?
They're all local stickers.
Okay.
These are all walking county.
Well, you leave me the stickers, and when they're out on break, I'll run around and put them on them for them.
Okay, our next item is an action item. If you could, please, Diane.
A motion to approve a commercial lease between the Port of Bellingham and LFS Incorporated for warehouse premises located at F Street in Bellingham, Washington, subject to commission approval of the budget allocation and contract award to install improvements at the F Street warehouse.
Good afternoon, Commissioner. Shirley McFerrin, Real Estate Director. Happy Thanksgiving to all of you. It's my pleasure to be in front of you today with the transaction between the Port and Lemmy Fish. This will be a presentation with Brady Scott, Adam Fulton, our Director of Facilities, and myself. And you will hear from Shane Russell, the president of LFS. Shane Russell is in the audience today, if you could just raise your hand. And the operations vice president for LFS is here as well. Janice Zegers, if you could just raise your hand. Thank you very much. Okay, so this is a transaction where LFS would relocate from Fairhaven Marine Industrial Park, in whole or in part, to our F Street warehouse. We think that this is a great opportunity for LFS, and it's a terrific opportunity for the Port. What I'm really excited about, too, is bringing online additional marine trade space in the Fairhaven Marine Industrial Park. Those buildings that will be vacated are in the 30,000 square foot range, and quite frankly, we're out of inventory. So this will be terrific for additional inventory, and it's certainly in the best interest of real estate to backfill that property as quickly as we can. So the deal on the table today is a 5-year lease with 2-year renewals. And I will say that before we put this presentation together, I started checking to see how long LFS has been on our waterfront. And it is nearly 50 years. So while we have a 5-year deal with 2 5-year renewal options, I would hedge my bet on LFS for a much longer term. So the use of the building would be assembly, manufacturing, warehouse, shipping, wholesale distribution, and the initial premises that would be taken under lease would be 40,000 square feet. And then effective July 1st, 2019, they would take under lease nearly 104,000 square feet of space, which is close to half of the building. Meanwhile, between now and the 1st of 2019, July 1st, they will pay for a minimum of 80,000 square feet. So the next slide, Brady's going to talk to you about the next slide, and then I'll be up here in just a second.
Good evening, Commissioners. Brady Scott, Real Estate Representative with the Port. LFS currently leases 3 warehouses at the Fairhaven Marine Industrial Park. You can see that on the bottom picture on the slide. This new lease contemplates transitioning a portion, if not all, of those uses to the F Street warehouse. At the start of this new lease, LFS will occupy 40,000 square feet at the F Street warehouse, and they'll vacate the building number 1 at Fairhaven Marine Industrial Park. They'll continue to lease buildings number 2 and number 7 shown there. As Cheryl mentioned, on July 1st, 2019, the new lease provides LFS to occupy the full 104,000 square feet at the F Street warehouse, and you can see that area in the top picture on the slide. On or before July 1st, 2019, LFS will also vacate building number 2 at Fairhaven Marine Industrial Park, and at their option, they may vacate building number 7. During the period prior to July 1st, 2019, LFS and this lease guarantees that they'll occupy a minimum of 80,000 square feet between both properties. This provides LFS with the flexibility to relocate their business operations over a reasonable time period while providing the port with certainty regarding the minimum area of occupancy and amount of rent we'll receive during that time. Next slide. In regards to the rent at the F Street warehouse for the initial 40,000 square feet, the port will be getting about $15,000 a month. And then on or before July 1st, 2019, the port will receive $40,000 a month for a minimum revenue of $1.9 million over the first 5-year term. LFS will continue to pay for portions of the Fairhaven Marine Industrial Park properties until they vacate those buildings as described in the previous slide. The lease also provides for the 2 5-year renewal options. Rent in the first renewal period would be adjusted annually by the Consumer Price Index adjustment. And then in the second renewal term, rent would be subject to renegotiation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Brady. So the transaction in front of you today contemplates some improvements going into the building. So the lease in front of you includes the notion that the port would put improvements into the property. And your second item on your agenda is approval and awarding that contract. So I just want to caution you that one can't go without the other. We need you to support both of those transactions. So the lessor improvements, the port would put the fire suppression system in. We'd put the heat to support the fire suppression system. We would put in a demising wall, and you can see where the yellow area is where the demising wall would go. And I would argue that that really isn't a tenant improvement because we've decided with your approval that we want to break up this building. We'd put in a loading ramp. One thing that I want to draw to your attention that is very important in this deal is that if for some reason the port fails to complete the improvements of the first 40,000 square feet, by January 31st, 2017, LFS can terminate this lease, okay? I'm comfortable with that because we are comfortable that when we award this bid or when you award this bid, that contractor is going to deliver in that timeline. And Adam's going to tell you a little bit more about that in just a second. Yes, Commissioner Briscoe.
January 31st, 2017?
That's correct. 18. Ooh.
I was going to say, aren't we in 2017? So we're a little past due. Sorry about that. But
Thanks for catching that. My mistake. Wow. Thank you.
you had me going for a minute. I was thinking, am I wrong here? Is it 16
No,
or
that's
17?
January 31st, 2018. Thank
Very
you.
good. Thank you.
Thank you. So the other tenant improvements is that LFS would install restrooms, offices, storage racking, and information technology systems, and then any other improvements that they would need as a result of occupying the property. The one thing in the lease, though, is that is LFS has the right to ask us to put the restrooms in, which we're okay with if you are, and they would pay us a lump sum payment for the restrooms, or they would pay it over the first 5 years of the lease at 5% rate of return to the port. So I believe that they're going to ask us to amortize it over the first 5 years of the lease. And Adam's going to come up and talk a little bit about our delivery if you are inclined to award this bid. And then we have one more slide, and then Shane will be up here. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Adam Fulton, Director of Facilities. Just a little more information. We're doing some improvements to that building that we would be doing no matter what, assuming that we would be dividing that space into smaller spaces. As Cheryl mentioned, it's difficult to find a tenant that wants 240,000 square feet. That's quite a bit, but much simpler to find smaller tenants. So some of those improvements are simply ones we would do regardless, such as the demising wall and the electrical, putting it on its own sub-meter, putting the light switches so they work in the right spaces, these sort of things. Maybe the improvement that is not, that is intended for the use of LFS is the sprinkler system. And basically we go up to a very good, very flexible and dynamic system. It's sprinkler systems come in two flavors, basically. A control system, which is just meant to basically keep things damp until the fire department can get there. The other is a suppression system, and it's an indoor deluge, and that's what this is. So what drives that is the amount and the type of storage that we do. We're storing clear up to 20 feet. And 12 is sort of a threshold. Below 12, you can use lesser systems. And then what you're storing matters. When you're storing plastics, which essentially the fire department will tell you that is frozen gasoline, it drives up the requirement. So we're putting in what's called an ESFR system, early suppression fast response. And it's meant to put out the fire completely even before the fire department gets there. It's a wet system as opposed to the existing dry system. So because it's wet, it can't freeze. So which means it has to be kept, the space has to be kept above 40 degrees, which means you have to insulate the wall and put in some heaters. And we're doing all that. You'll see in the next commission action that contract to Tiger Construction that we're recommending. Yeah, those are the improvements. Any questions on those?
No, I'm good.
Okay.
You're insulating the demising wall.
Yes.
Is there any reason to believe this facility would ever be below 40 degrees?
It's a non-heated space, and we're taking it up to what's called a semi-heated space. And so, kind of interestingly, I'm very impressed with the work of a new mechanical engineering firm we've been using for this, called the Greenbush Group out of Seattle, a fellow named John Greenlaw. And we had to come up with R24 for that wall, and then we had to come up with an additional 4,500 square feet on one of the exterior walls without touching the ceiling. Fortunately, the ceiling's already insulated to an R11. So we found a very creative way to do that, and it is a great solution. And my estimate from when I was very pessimistic about how much insulating we were going to have to do went from $300,000 to $50,000, and the bids bore out closer to $15,000. So really thrilled with that.
You still have to run some heat?
Yes, right. And so again, it's a pretty complex bit of code, but it has to do with putting a semi-heated space adjacent to a non-heated space, which is what the remainder of the building is, as well as, of course, the outside walls. So we introduce heat, and you can go about 8 BTUs per square foot. And then because you've introduced heat, you now have to insulate because the energy compliance codes require you to insulate, and you can't just pump heat into an uninsulated space. So
Almost half the cost of the TIs here, and I know I'm jumping ahead to the second part, but they're tied together. Half the cost is a sprinkler system, and that's all on us.
the commissioner's correct.
So if I did my math correctly, the $745,000 and the rent that we're going to get, we're going to spend all the money on the TIs. It'll take us about almost 3 years to get that money back because it's in stages. Is that correct? I'm not speaking against it. I just want to make sure I
It's
understand.
about 2.5 years is the payback, but I would hope that LFS, once they're in there for the first 5 years, is in there for the long haul. And so that is the risk. And like I mentioned, I think that we ought to hedge our bets on LFS. But you're right, it is a 2.5 year payback.
Thank you.
So our final slide, what does this look like financially for the port? So if you look at the blue column, I looked at the estimated fair market value of this building, and I think it's worth about $20 million at $80 a square foot. If we put $850,000 into it, that makes it about $83.40 per square foot. So on the low end, the rate of return would be about 5.5%. And then I looked at the insurance replacement value. And the value is $14.2 million. If we add $850,000 in improvements, you can see there that we would get about a 7.6% return. So I think the threshold between 5.5 and 7.6 is a pretty reasonable return on our investment on this building. So I'm going to invite Shane Russell up here, and then I'd be happy to come up, answer any additional questions that the commission may have, and the staff is recommending approval.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm Shane with LFS, and on behalf of LFS, we're super excited about our future home at the F Street warehouse. LFS has gone through a lot of growth over the last 3 years. We added stores in Anchorage and Homer and Sitka, and took on the assets of Red Marine Supplies. And in Building 1, which is in Fairhaven Marine Industrial Park, which is our main distribution center, we just no longer had the room to get done what we needed to get done. And so this year was a very frustrating year for LFS. We had trouble getting product to our stores in Alaska as well as to our customers. And so going through that spring, we came to the conclusion that we needed to move our distribution center into a much larger facility. And until the F Street warehouse became a viable option for us, it looked like LFS was probably going to move out of Bellingham and Whatcom County for our warehousing needs. So I think we're very excited that we are able to stay here. Most of our freight gets shipped out of Seattle, so we were looking at moving further south to do our shipping and our distribution. But it's nice to keep everything close to our corporate offices here in Bellingham. And not only in the future would we probably move out of all the buildings from the Fairhaven Marine Industrial Park, but we also lease 30,000 square feet over off Bakerview Spur on Midway. So getting everything under one roof obviously makes us much more efficient. It'll reduce a lot of our cost structures, and it'll allow us to continue to grow and create more jobs in the community. So, yeah, I hope you guys approve it. I'm going to tell Shirley that we will probably be there until we outgrow that, if we outgrow that. So, but yeah, LFS has been a long-term port tenant, and we love working with the port. And you got some shrewd negotiators on the port staff, so I told my crew not to agree to any expenses, but they talked us into some, and it's going to be a great situation for all of us. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shane.
Thanks, Shane.
Thank you, Shanna.
Okay, one other thing I did want to mention to the commission is Building 7 at the Fairhaven Marine Industrial Park. LFS put a fire suppression system in that building at a cost of about $150,000. So we will reap the benefit of that improvement someday too, and I think that's important. So do you have any questions, comments? Otherwise, maybe we can move to the next agenda item and award the bid, unless you have any questions for me.
Commissioner Briscoe, any questions? Mr. McCullough?
No, I have no questions.
Great, thank
Now let's move to the next item and
Take a vote
I
on this.
think we have to vote.
vote on
first.
this one
Yes.
first. Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Some things are really easy, Shane. This one was easy.
Yes, the next action item, please, Diane.
Authorize the executive director to execute a contract with Tiger Construction of Everson, Washington for the 1000 F Street warehouse tenant improvements in the amount of $745,682, plus a 10% contingency for a total authorized contract amount of $820,250, and reallocate $470,000 from 2017 Capital Improvement Program CIP Budget 107-738, FH Replace Fire Suppression FMIP 1, to 2018 CIP Budget CW-Demise F Street Warehouse, creating a combined budget of $960,250 for immediate use.
Good afternoon again, Commissioners. Adam Fulton, Director of Facilities. I won't need to add too much to what's already been presented, but just to add that we had a very clean bid process with 3 contractors we're very familiar with, and Tiger Construction being our responsible bidder with the apparent lowest responsive bid. Excellent contractor. We're thrilled to do the work, and they'll be starting contingent on your approval Monday. So, do the Commissioners have any questions about the bid process or this award or this budget reallocation?
Where's Summit Construction located?
No, I'm afraid I don't know that. They're the one out of the 4 that I'm not familiar with.
I mean, my gosh, the sprinkler system with them was $1 million compared to $348,000, quite a difference.
When a project is as fast as this one, we're setting some sort of record, I'm sure, for government work here. But when a project's this fast, sometimes contractors will assume there's a desperation mode on behalf of the owner, and they'll just slam a number out that maybe we have to take because maybe it's the only one we'll get. Not the case here. We have a good community we're working with. So.
Sure. Okay, any questions?
None.
Commissioner McCauley?
No, no.
Okay, hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Heartily, so.
Record show that passes 3-0. So our next item is a presentation on tsunami.
Oh. How come the first words aren't always run on these pamphlets? You can get it through the wave.
Good afternoon, Commission. I'm Neil Clement. I'm the Emergency Management and Security Officer for the Port. And it's usually that I'm here talking about security, which is a good thing, because when I'm here talking about emergency management, it's often because we've had an incident and you're getting a briefing. In this case, no incident. But I did want to tell you about some things that are happening on the waterfront that are going to be obvious, some that are going to not be obvious, but thought you should know. First off, all hazard alert broadcast, also known as a tsunami warning system. We have had installed one up in Blaine Harbor not long ago, and we had one put in last week. And let me tell you, this has been, for me, a 12-year odyssey. I started this project literally in 2005, and to try and bring it to fruition here. The other thing is we've begun establishing tsunami evacuation signage, and we have an internal evacuation plan that I'm going to talk to you a little bit about. First of all, the tsunami siren. It's activated by satellite normally from the Emergency Operations Center at Camp Murray in Tacoma. It can also be radio activated by local responders. And we're setting up protocols now as to how they can do that. Part of this is because it's an all hazards alert system. So if we have a chemical spill, for instance, fire or law enforcement can come on and issue direct messages over this siren and over the PA system of the siren so that everybody understands exactly what's going on. It wasn't very long ago that I was the emergency manager for Whatcom County, working for the sheriff's office. And we had a time where a siren went off all by itself. And nobody knew what to do. And yet, every time we tested it, every month, we put a thing in the paper saying, we're going to test it, here's what you do if you ever hear it. And I got so many calls saying, we didn't know what to do. And so after the pipeline event, we discontinued using those sirens because they weren't very effective at telling people what to do. This is the kind of siren that'll tell you what to do and give you clear instructions. It's got an intense blue light so that hearing impaired individuals can be warned that there's a problem. There's currently 7 of these sirens located throughout Whatcom County. There's 2 on the Lummi Peninsula, 1 at Sandy Point. I started that one 12 years ago. There's 1 at Birch Bay, 1 in Blaine, and 1 at Point Roberts. This is the 7th one, and we're going to have an 8th one on Lummi Island next year. So we're going to get pretty good coverage throughout Whatcom County in terms of tsunami. These are managed by Whatcom County Emergency Management, and we will have a small MOU to be able to designate exactly whose responsibilities are what. Most of our responsibilities are to provide a small trickle of electricity to keep the batteries going. And it's funded by the National Tsunami Mitigation Program and by the military department down in Camp Murray. And this is to the tune of about $50,000 for installation and the product itself. And so our costs out of pocket were permits, a little bit of electricity, and having an electrician hook it up to our system. Here's where it's located, right in Squalicum Harbor. And there's a better picture of it. This was a sound propagation study that I had an engineer do back in 2005. And at that time, I think that the tsunami siren was a little bit smaller. And so this may actually be a little out of date, but it'll give you an idea. And the idea that I had at that time was to try and have 1 at Fairhaven and 1 at Squalicum Harbor. And that would give pretty much full coverage to the entire bay. Testing, it'll be tested at noon on the first Monday of every month, and we'll probably hear it here. I hope we do. The tests will play an exceedingly musical version of Westminster chimes, followed by a voice test message. If we actually have a real event where there's a warning involved, then that'll be a wailing siren, followed by warning information about what you should do. So you may have seen recently we've got tsunami signs going up along Roeder Avenue, F Street, going up Chestnut. We're talking about having additional signage down at the end of Cornwall and on Harris Avenue and 4th Avenue in Fairhaven so that people know what direction to go. And those tsunami signs, at least in this area that is shown on the map, are already up and in place. And we'll turn to this internal evacuation. I call it a SOG, Suggested Operating Guideline. And it's currently being reviewed by staff at this point. Basically, the assumption is that a 9.0 or greater magnitude earthquake could happen 200 miles off the coast at the Cascadia subduction zone. The models show that for Whatcom County, the earthquake isn't the biggest threat. It's the tsunami. And for a long, long time, we didn't think that a tsunami could even reach this far. There are all the islands out there to absorb all the energy, but when they ran models, they found out that no, that's not true. That the tsunami energy will take its easiest course, but when it gets into Bellingham Bay, it's got nowhere to go. It's corked up, and it then results in tsunami flow going up the Nooksack River and up the Red River, and joining together, creating a peninsula, basically, out of the Lummi Peninsula right now, or an island. We may see some inundation here on the north side of Bellingham Bay, where the greatest push would be. Those are the greatest threats that we know of at this point in time, and that was done with the best science. And right now, I know that they're working on trying to get some additional funding to do better models for areas that they were unable to in the past, and to improve upon the models that we've got for Bellingham Bay. The hardest hit areas would be Sandy Point, the Lummi Peninsula, and like I said, maybe here on the north coast of Bellingham Bay. The size and duration of the quake should be sufficient that people should be educated to move upland. You go through that kind of an earthquake and you're on the coast anywhere, you got to go up. People on board vessels, however, may not feel it, especially at night. If you're asleep on your fishing boat, you may not know there's been a large earthquake. That's what the tsunami siren's all about. It'll warn you and let you know. Then we've got about 2 hours. I say roughly 2 hours because the plan that I've got is saying I want everybody out of here in an hour and a half. And during that time, we'll be assisting in evacuating. We'll be doing shutdowns of electrical systems, preparing to assemble leadership at the ARF station where we'll have a coordination center. And at that coordination center, we'll have damage assessments coming in. We'll be able to do tactical priorities and then do incident action plans so that we know where the most important things are that need to be done so that we can get back on our feet and whole again. Any questions? Happy to answer anything.
I have one.
Okay,
So we're going to have tidal rise here. We're not going to have a wave, correct?
that's right.
Okay. I was just curious. I thought that's what it would be.
Yes,
That's what it
but
was
some-
before. And that was at 65, 64.
What's that?
We had tidal. It emptied out Chuckanet Bay. And,
I'm unfamiliar with that one.
oh yeah, no,
Yeah.
and you could
No.
all the water was gone in Chuckanet Bay, and you could walk down and pick the oysters and the clams up because it sucked all the mud out when it all went out through the trestle too. But it actually physically emptied Chuckanet Bay
Yeah, the
on
currents can
outside
be-
the train tracks there into the bay itself.
The currents can be very strong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but it was tidal. You know, we just had we rose and dropped.
We recently did Cascadia Rising, which was a large multi-state exercise, and we had the scientists that developed the scenario for that, and they looked at Squalicum Harbor in particular with the tides of that day. And given the tides for that day, it wasn't going to be that huge of an impact to us. There were things that were not good. There's no question about that. But in terms of worst case scenario, that scenario didn't provide it.
If I recall correctly, the water was gone for just a little over an hour.
Well,
It pulled
It's a
it
long
out.
time.
It was gone. Yeah.
This map, this little brochure, there's a map of the Bellingham waterfront in it, and there's a section down on C Street that's a concern that I don't see addressed here in the yellow, which would be the hazard zone. And at the C Street terminal with a really high tide, there's not a lot of room between there and the water.
no.
So is this, do you know what this map is based on? And should we maybe not rely on this as our only issue, and maybe we should go a little bit further than these yellow zones?
That was based upon the information they had available in 2005.
Okay.
Since then, they came back, they said, let's add some other areas, including some areas of Fairhaven and further along the waterfront. They also looked at Birch Bay and Blaine, but again, you know, and what I've cautioned people in Blaine about is that we think that it's probably not going to be very bad because, again, water seeks its easiest route. And going into Drayton Harbor is not the easiest route. The models that they did for Puget Sound could not squeeze a tsunami through Deception Pass. It was too narrow. And so it went around the islands and came back and inundated LaConner and Anacortes and areas that way. But yeah, I'm fairly confident that we may see some inundation in Blaine, but not a lot.
These are, again, they're just surges of water, they're not,
Yeah, there's surges.
yeah.
Yeah, but it could go for several hours, if not days.
Why is the emergency location, the ARF building, rather than the emergency management building?
Well, we originally set up, we had, first of all, when I first got here, they didn't have the Emergency Operations Center. and, or the Emergency Coordination Center. And I intentionally called ours a coordination center to make it different from the operations center. And we wanted to have a place so that if we have to take care of just us, we'll have generator power, we'll have a place to go that's high above tide, and that we all know where it is and how to get there. And we would have a liaison with the other coordination center.
Thank you. Any other questions, gentlemen?
I have none.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very
Bill.
much.
So, unless you gentlemen want to bring something forward now, we'll adjourn and come back at 5:30.
Sounds lovely.
Okay, we are adjourned till 5:30.
No, that's what I thought. I smell Fritos around here somewhere. That's okay. I was looking around to see if I had a bag laying here or something.
First item is public comment. For clarification, we're going to have a public hearing on the strategic budget, and there's public comment during that time, and there's also public comment on the hearing, and there's public comment now. We have 2 people signed up for the public comment now, and we have 6 for the public hearing so far. So with that in mind, our first person to speak, it looks like it's Robert Laney. And please go to the podium so we can hear you on the YouTube.
Say my name. My name is Robert Lane. Do you need more? No. I just wanted to thank you all for the efforts you've put out on behalf of the train crossings. I realize it was dumped in the port's lap like 2 or 3 years ago, and that's not much time. However, my comment that we the people have put up with the train crossings for a whole lot more years than the time you've had to deal with it. Anyhow, I'm hoping you'll make Bellingham a place we're all proud to live in. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Next one is John McKenzie.
Hello. My name is John McKenzie, and I live on Highland Drive. I appreciate this opportunity to raise a somewhat different aspect regarding the train noise that I believe is relevant to commissioners voting on this topic. I'll start with an anecdotal story and then describe 2 specific areas I researched. Twice I've met people in airports when in response to my saying where I lived, they replied that they knew Bellingham. I expected them to add something glowing about how nice a place it is, but rather they said, how do you handle the train noises? My understanding is that a major role of the Port Commission is to maximize the revenue of the port property. Clearly, the value of the land is relevant to the potential for revenue. If the silencing of the horns were to increase the value of the port property, which also reflects the value of the properties and communities adjacent to the port property, that assumes the current property prices are depressed due to the noise. I very much doubt that the real estate industry can or is willing to attempt to define the lowering of property value, but that does not mean the noise is not relevant to value. Since the federal train horn decibel level increase and the quiet zone rule came into effect, across the country there's been 388 quiet zones approved, plus an additional 129 in Texas. There have been 9 approved in Washington state, in both small and large communities. Each of these quiet zones requires similar upgrades to what we need here. The railways did not pay for those upgrades, the communities paid. Why did they do so? The only answer is that these communities deemed that the improved safety and quality of life warranted the expenditures. It's difficult to imagine that 517 communities could have got it wrong. To provide a more quantitative assessment of the land value relationship to the train noise, I compared the hotel room prices at the Fairhaven Inn and the Chrysalis Hotel with their easy access to the shops, restaurants, and bookstores of Fairhaven, to the hotel room price at the Bellwether Hotel, where one has to drive to do anything. I've stayed in all 3 hotels in Ocean View rooms. The rooms are similarly large, feel new, and have similar views. I checked the prices for similar ocean views 2 months out. The Fairhaven Inn was $209 per night, the Chrysalis $224, and the Bellwether was $314. That is, the Bellwether price was exactly 50% higher than the Fairhaven Inn, and only slightly less so compared to the Chrysalis. The only thing I can contribute this price difference to is that one can sleep well at the Bellwether without being disturbed by train noise. I've been attending public meetings every 3 or so years on this issue since 2006, when the required decibel level of the horns was raised significantly. I'm hoping that the Commission will take this opportunity to recognize the synergy between the community quality of life and the value of the property the port has the responsibility to manage. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, John. And if you want to hold on right there for a minute, I think we can kill 2 birds with 1 stone. If you want to wait just a second. Any comments or anything, gentlemen?
Most certainly.
Okay. So no one else that wanted to sign up for the public comment period, not the public hearing? Okay, very good. We will recess the public meeting, and we will open the public hearing on the strategic budget. And the first item is the public comment. And John, you can be first if you'd like, since you're already up there, and you signed up twice.
No, I just signed up because there was a confusion with the sheets.
Oh, okay,
So
very good.
I said my piece. Thank you.
So the next person for public comment is Greg Hoffenbacher.
Greg Hoffenbacher. My wife and I live on South Hill, and I'm also the neighborhood representative to the Mayor's Neighborhood Advisory Commission. And here speaking in favor for the railroad crossing projects in the 2018 budget. Our neighborhood strongly supports those projects. Fairhaven's a very different place than it was a couple decades ago. There's a lot more people, residents, visitors, workers. There's a lot more development, houses, condominiums, apartments, hotels, restaurants, shops. The railroad industry is also very different than it was a few decades ago. Train traffic has increased, oil train traffic has increased exponentially, and the train horns, as we know, are much louder than they used to be, up to 110 decibels, which can be heard for miles. It's critical that we upgrade the railroad crossing infrastructure in Fairhaven to modern health and safety standards because of these changes. Thank you for supporting the project. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Greg. Our next up is Alex McLean.
Hi, guys. This is not my safe space. It's really hot. It's really bright. I'm hungry. I'm cranky, but I'm going to try and keep it PG. I wanted to talk tonight about how things are going on the waterfront. I'm kind of unique in this room. I've spent more time in the granary than anybody here. I've worked down there for the last year under the dubious management of Louis Parr, and I was the first employee in Bellingham that worked directly for Harcourt. I've been doing construction for about 20 years, except for some time off to get a sustainable design minor, an environmental science minor, and I've worked on all sorts of projects. I've project managed projects bigger than the granary. I've worked for people all over the state. I've never worked for a person like Louis Parr. And that should be an exclamation of how wonderful he is. I'm kind of going the other way. He is, whatever you guys see when you come down and you put on the brand new hard hats and you walk around and point at stuff, that's a different guy. 100% of the employees that have walked onto that job site hoping for a good job on the waterfront have quit. I lasted the longest just because I wanted to work on that project. I talked to Commissioner Jorgensen when GP was getting torn down, and I talked to Commissioner McCauley. I don't know why, but I really wanted to work on the waterfront. And yeah, I'm disappointed. I'm kind of pissed. You know, that's the best that Harcourt could offer. He's got, you know, I don't want to be up here, but the thing that turned the tide for me was getting letters from the Human Rights Commission. I didn't even know that that commission existed. You know, it's like, oh, what's this about? Well, it's your job. It's the insane gibberish that's going on down there. And he's trying to get stamps on architectural drawings from people that aren't architects. You know, the inspections, I don't know what's going on. I don't know why I'm telling you guys this. I don't know why it's not on your radar. You know, the inspection regime is non-existent. Just the dodginess with not paying subcontractors for materials. There's people in town that haven't been paid in a year. And this is the first step that Harcourt's putting into Bellingham. You know, this is supposed to be their best foot forward. Safety issues, I mean, that damn building caught on fire. We dumped 7 fire extinguishers into that thing and we were freaking out. It was kind of a sporty day, you know? It's a wood building, wrapped in concrete. Most people call that a chimney. And what did we do? We didn't get new fire extinguishers. No, we just kept 7 fire extinguishers sitting there at the entryway where we'd have to walk past. It's kind of insulting. When we finally did get a fire extinguisher, Louis locks it in his office. And that's not helpful when he goes to France to renew his visa for a month or 2. He flat out disappears. And there's still guys working down there. That's not project management. That's I don't know, what do you call it? That's France. I want to go to France. But I also want a good job on the waterfront. And I think I would be remiss if I just sat back and had online tantrums without talking to you guys directly. The guy is a menace. I mean, every week that I was there, you'd see someone blow up, tools throwing, you know, just howling, belligerent, bellicose. Yeah. I don't know what the malfunction is.
Our public comment is for 3 minutes. Let me thank people in advance for sticking to that. So if you could, I've given you a lot of latitude here. So if you could kind of wrap it up, we'd appreciate it.
Yeah, well, like I said, personnel, everybody's quit. Inspections seem really dodgy. I've been on a lot of, you know, I've done bathroom remodels that have had more oversight than this thing. You know, it just seems to me like you should have, he didn't know that you had to call in for an inspections. He didn't know that you had to pay for a permit. Surely you guys knew that there's no permit for 4 or 5 months. I think people deserve good blue jobs and good green buildings down there. You are getting neither with this first effort from Harcourt. And if you didn't know it, I'm telling you. Thanks.
Thank you for your comments. Once again, thank you for keeping your comments to the 3-minute time limit. Our next speaker is Jane Bright.
Thank you for the time. Question, and this is obviously about the train crossing safety upgrades. And as of today, I'm not aware where the grant stands and would love to get an update if you know any more. Okay, that's kind of what I thought. All right, so here we are. You have to vote on this budget without that information. And I hope you will vote for it. If the grant does not come through, I assure you that the public will be back to give you whatever support, political cover, whatever, to come up with that extra $300,000 or $350,000 to do Harris Street. And I'd also like to give some recognition to whoever did the design to get that cost cut almost in half. My husband's an engineer, and his definition of an engineer is someone who can do for $1 what any damn fool can do for 10. And I think that applies to this one. So we're here for you. If you need it, if it comes up, especially if it comes next year, we're here. And then the other question is, we're going to be optimistic that this is actually going to go forward. And obviously the public is going to be very interested in getting progress updates. And as much as we like hanging out with you folks here, this may not be the most efficient way to stay on top of what's happening. So looking forward to your input is the best way to stay connected. And as I say, if you need public help, we're here for you. Thank you.
Can I get your husband's phone number?
Yes.
Thank you, Jane. Our next speaker, Grace Munson. Maybe I can't read. Did you want to speak?
No, I was just signing in. I did the wrong sheet.
Oh, okay. Scratch another one. Roxanne,
Yeah, we both probably signed the wrong thing, yeah.
okay. Very good. Okay, that looks like it's everyone that signed up. Is there anyone that didn't get a chance to sign up that wanted to speak during the public hearing here on the strategic budget? Okay, very good. Commissioners, any? No, we don't have any input at this time.
No, we gotta wait until we close the public hearing.
Okay, so I'll close the public hearing and we'll reconvene the regular commission meeting. And our first action item, if you will, please.
A motion to adopt Resolution Number 1365, approving the 2018 strategic budget, and Resolution Number 1366, authorizing the regular property tax levy and declaring a substantial need to maintain the maximum levy capacity.
Thanks, Diane. Tamara Sobczak, Director of Finance. Commissioners, before I field any questions and open it up for discussion, I wanted to mention the differences between the published draft budget and the final budget that we're asking you to approve tonight. There are 4 changes. The first one is the largest. Staff is now confident that we'll receive funding from the city and the county for the economic development division. That was not in the draft budget, so we've added about $528,000 a year to offset those economic development costs beginning in 2018.
And Commissioners, just for your knowledge, that item is in front of the county council right now, tonight.
Great. So the second item is the Harris Avenue crossing. It's been brought up before, but I wanted to make sure I mentioned it. It's in the draft budget at $688,000 with an offsetting grant of $600,000, but the cost that's in the final budget is $350,000 with an offset of $315,000. And we have not yet received that grant, but we are optimistically hopeful. The third item is the port's required to have a self-insurance audit on our health plan every 3 years, beginning in 2018. So we added that $20,000 in 2018. It's in the draft, but we also had that in every single year after that. So we went ahead and pulled those funds back out in those off years. So those are 3 positive moves on the budget. And the last one is very minor. It's in the asset replacement schedule. We added an item just for $10,000 for unexpected or emergency repairs if a computer goes kaput and we need to replace it. In addition, we added 2 laptops for engineering staff and then also removed a laptop that was in 2018 in error. So those are the only changes from the draft to the final. So the action in front of you and the resolutions are to approve the budget, to approve the tax levy, which you have indicated to keep flat, and then also maintain our banked capacity. So with that, I'd field any questions or open it up for discussion.
Thank you, Tamara. Commissioner Briscoe?
Well, the questions I had, I asked previously of staff, and they were answered.
Commissioner McCullough?
Tamara, flat, there was a conversation recently about adding the 1%. Are we not adding the 1%?
I heard commission direction to not add the 1%. That was our understanding.
That's what I heard as well.
Oh, okay. All right.
That's what I
Sure.
thought we did.
That's what I thought we did too.
Okay.
I was thinking.
Doesn't matter if it's 2-1, you're going to win anyway. So I was leaving it up to anybody. I didn't have a case either way for that one. I think that's my only question. I would say, and just to lobby my commissioners while I can, before that though, that the railroad crossings, the railroad's amazing. The FRA says the horn has to be 110 decibels or whatever it is. If it was the FAA, it would be 60 decibels. It's insane. The airport can't be more than 60 or we got to fix your house. And the FRA says we're going to 110 and sucks for you, so. Boy, the FAA needs to go talk to the FRA, I can tell you that. Appreciate that folks have found a way to save money on the crossings. I think that's, we made a promise to the community last year that we would fund these, so I do hope that that sticks. And appreciate the move for some funding for a potential project out in Kendall, which I think is that funds are going to reside in the economic development new department, I suppose. That's where it's going to go.
No, it's reserved
Just
as
reserved?
the same as our emergency reservations.
So I will also be lobbying the new commissioners for that, so that continues. And then with the savings on the Harris Avenue, because what I asked to do was to put off the building for Seaview North and use that budget in 18 to pay for crossings and this Kendall project. If there's some savings that can be added to looking at what it would take to build that building for Seaview from that original fund, because those should be relatively, in the same amount. It wouldn't be construction money, of course, but there might be something there to do some engineering and get moving on that and see if it works out.
Unfortunately, because it's offset by a grant, the savings aren't ours. We're saving other people money when we re-engineer that. There's a little bit as our contribution, but on top of my head, I don't know what that is. But there will be a small amount of savings, not much.
Well, yeah, but if you look at it, if the offset of not building the $2 million building for Seaview is over here, then anything we get over, from that grant is going to be helpful for that. So, anyway, I just offer that to Commissioner Briscoe, Commissioner Robbins. That I don't think the owner of Seaview was super happy that I made the argument that we should push that out. I thought we had some commitments in front of it, but I do want to continue to support the idea that if we can build these buildings, if we've got a fund for it, then I think we should definitely do it. We did it with All American Marine. I think it was a great project. It's a good way forward. I think it's a positive thing for the public to invest in these. The public gets all their money back and owns the building at the end of the day. It's a win-win. So ports can do it, cities can't. So I think that's a positive way forward. So I just want to let Seaview know that I'm still interested and was hoping that we could do it next year, but I hope the commission follows through on some of those projects in the future.
I have a couple concerns. One, in our strategic budget introduction, one of the first things we talk about that the port should do is job preservation and job creation. And as I look at this budget for 2018, I'm concerned because I really don't see any jobs being created in this budget. But I also see where we are having revenues of $47.5 million, and we have expenditures of $58 million. So we're taking roughly $10 million out of a rainy day fund, if you will, and putting it into this year's budget with really no big solid job creations. That really concerns me. We got the budget that the staff came up with after our budget retreat didn't have the web blockers in Blaine and didn't have the money for whatever we're going to do in North County in it, and it did have the Seaview building in it. In the meantime, we've also received a letter from the Working Waterfront Coalition asking us to be in favor of the Seaview North's building. And I would love to see us put that one building as a job creator into this year's budget and move the other two to 2019. And if we're able to, then we move those up as we find more money on projects that aren't done. But I look at what we've done with All American Marine. We built that building in a year. We had the money to do that. And look, in 1 year, we've launched a boat already with 35 new living wage jobs. When I don't see that in this budget, it really concerns me that the job creation is not in here. So I would like to go back and take those two items out and put the Seaview building back in.
Well, I would disagree with that.
Blaine, I'll take us, one point there. That building comes down, it frees up more industrial space. We have two companies up there that want to expand. When they expand, I assume you're gonna create more jobs. It will give us more space to reorganize our industrial area, to possibly put up another building. We can expand our shipyard there so he can put more boats on the ground. If he puts more boats on the ground, he's gonna put more people to work. So I suppose we could have wrote a proposal as the other folks did with a whole bunch more jobs. And this, if this happens, I mean, it's all if it happens. Well, I had that building in line before the other building come along, and it will create some new jobs. So to say that we're not going to create some new jobs this year by building that particular building, I think is a false statement. I don't agree with that statement. As far as the building in the North County, Commissioner McCauley brought that forward, and I thought he explained fairly clearly that we could put people to work out there if everything could come together. So to say that neither project that's slated for 2018 would not create any new jobs, I think is not correct, in my opinion.
It won't create them in 2018 is the point I'm making.
So
correct.
in defense of my pitch for project out in the east end of the county, it's been criticized because people have said, well, who's the tenant? If this agency isn't able to take long-term views and moderate risk for the future, and only is willing to take low-risk choices, for example, building Seaview a building, then it sort of beggars the question, what are we doing? Where a private organization, a private company like Seaview could get private funding. There is literally nobody that's going to go out into the east end of the county and help develop the workforce and what they can do with their resources in their community, because there's no profit motive there. And that's what the Port of Bellingham can do. We don't need to make a profit, but we do need to make the investment. There's no private company that's going to do that because there's no return on the investment. And that's why I said, let's continue to look at building structures for port tenants. I think it's the right way forward. But there's nobody that's going to help the people on the east end of the county develop their resources unless there's a profit motive. And you would have seen it in the past if it had been there. I ran into a fellow giving a presentation on, they make these, small power plants. Well, 100 megawatts. I don't know if that's small or not. Their smallest one is 5 megawatts. So it's an interesting technology. It's really old school. It's called critical CO2. So they take waste heat, or they can make heat. But they can take a very small amount of heat. They can change the state of the carbon dioxide in the system. There's no input, there's no output, there's no leakage. If it leaks, it's just CO2. And they produce electricity with it, right? So I asked this fellow at this presentation, how do you get the heat? Where do you get the heat? Well, they can use it from all kinds of different sources. They don't need a massive amount of heat. But the amount of available biomass that you could literally just truck to a burner and attach to this machine and produce 5 megawatts of electricity and all the new jobs associated with it, all of which would be good, higher paying jobs. That's there, but somebody's got to give them some place to do that. And that's why I think this is the right way forward, to take a look at what's the resource in the east end of the county that can be tapped into for the people that live there, so they have jobs there. Because if Bellingham is going to continue to be the center of the economy in this county, it's a 45-minute drive into Bellingham for a good paying job. Or if you want to go out to one of the refineries, that's probably even about the same amount of time. So anyway, my argument still is the same. I think that somebody's got to crack it, and if we wait for the private sector, those people out there will continue to suffer for work.
I certainly hear where you're coming from, Commissioner, but please understand, the Seaview North building, they've already gone out, had the drawings done, set to go, will create 30 jobs, and we're moving it to 2019 after all that work has been done. Also, keep in mind, when we're spending $10 million out of our rainy day fund at this time, the economy in Whatcom County right now is very, very good. And we should be salting money into the rainy day fund for the rainy day, not taking it out of the rainy day fund. So that really concerns me on this budget. From what I've heard from both of you gentlemen, you're not in favor of making any changes to the budget at this time. Is that correct?
No, I'm not.
Okay. Any other discussions? Okay, hearing none. Have you read? Did you read it? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Nay. Let the record show that passes 2-1.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Tamara. Other business.
Yeah, I've got one thing. Last meeting when Commissioner McCarron made the motion to deal with the firefighter stuff at the airport, and we approved that. One thing I think that I feel needs to be brought into that, and I wanted to discuss it with my fellow commissioners, is the job description title. The work that's going to be done on that, and stuff is sent to Seattle or Tacoma and back and forth. I think needs to come before the commissioners to be reviewed before it goes anywhere. I think it's going to be probably a little bit controversial what goes on there, hopefully not, but we didn't give direction to that aspect. And I would like to make sure that we have a handle on what's going back and forth so that we don't have any mistakes made that could torpedo this move for the firefighters to be recognized. And so I would ask that my fellow commissioners give direction with me that it does come before us and stuff is not sent out without us knowing what's going and we've reviewed it.
Has that document,
We've
has all
sent
that
out-
paperwork been put together?
Is Elizabeth in here? Yeah, I believe we've sent an initial change of the title, which is what the motion requested we did.
Yes, Elizabeth Monahan, Director of Human Resources. We did send out the most recent version of the job description with the new title that you instructed us to do. And now Department of Retirement System has come back and asked for a lot more information. We haven't sent anything else back. They asked about shifts, what their shift schedule was, and I did send that to them. So I do have a bunch more stuff that we're researching and ready and preparing on how to send that back.
I think my concern is the job description, how that's written out. And I think and I know that at least I have some questions as to how things are titled there with their job descriptions and what they do. And I want to make sure we're all on the same page and are very clear what that description is.
Well, I know that sometimes things need tweaking. That's why a lot of legislative bodies have staff to tweak the motion of, or the language of motions. My motion was about the wording and the titles and what came before what, and moving the airport group from the PERS into the LEF. So how does what you've done already get toward that?
So I've sent the job title change to Department of Retirement Systems as part of the job description, because that's kind of how it's contained, and said, here you go, step one, what else do you need? And so that's where they've come back and said, we need a bunch more information.
Okay. Okay.
When's that information due? Do you know?
I told them I'd get it to them as soon as we had it prepared, so there's no deadline.
It's not a deadline?
No. They're very happy to work with us on whatever our schedule is.
So we haven't answered your question.
No, I'm a bit concerned with job description. Want to make sure that there needs to be an adjustment there. That was very evident in the talks with the folks. If we just send the same job description down that we've had, we haven't done what we were trying to do, and that's make very clear what it is they actually do there, in my mind. Because I have a different take on some of the things they do there than other folks and staff do. And so I would like to know what we're sending down there, instead of it being sent and I find out what was sent afterwards. I would like to review what's being sent.
How about this? Can you send all three of us copies of whatever that was? I will get my staff working on it, which is me and a cocktail on the couch. And maybe Sheila can make me the cocktail. And I'll see if it gets to the goal of the motion, if that's okay.
Yeah, we'll distribute the, what we sent down, which is just a change in the title, and then we'll also distribute the questions that they send back, which have gone unanswered.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay, does that work, Matt?
Okay.
Yeah, I just want to be in the loop, and I want to, before things are sent, I would like to be able to look at it, as we have done with other things in the past, and make sure it's consistent with what our objective was with Commissioner McCauley's motion. And I felt that was left out of the motion, and was brought to my attention. It wasn't very clear by staff what we were doing there, so.
Okay.
Other than that, I have
Anything
none.
else, Commissioner McCauley?
I got one thing. A couple of weeks ago, I think some folks saw me lose my temper, and I have to apologize for that. I'd prefer to do that with Rob, which we've done before privately, because, sometimes hard things have to get said. But it did make me kind of wonder if we're really watching this project as closely as we need to. So I'd like to make this pitch to the commission, and I suppose to the executive's office. We've got a new economic development director that's coming on board. Hope to see him soon. That's going to be cool. And what I'd like to propose is that we look at a project manager. Somebody, if you recall back when the project was started, I think it was Lydia Bennett who was hired to sort of manage all that, and for 8 years she had literally nothing to do. So I think there's plenty to do now, and I know that Rob, you've got a lot of things on your plate, and we can't expect you to be an expert in every part of that. And so with that in mind, I would like to see, and this is going to be a conversation with, I think, the three of us and with you, what the project manager, what their duties would be, how that person would function. I'd like to see him as a direct report to the commission, so that any questions that we have are right here, so there's no misunderstanding at all. And the purpose for this is that I think I was frustrated because of I don't think I was getting all the information that I really wanted. And I think it's important in my last couple of meetings here to make sure that if there was a problem that cropped up while I was here and we can help the new commission, then I think I would like to do that. So I'd like to have a conversation with this commission, sort of figure out what this project manager thing would look like, and then leave it to the next commission to work through the hiring process and all of those things. Certainly wouldn't want to try to find someone that they have to work with. I'd rather that they would take that role on. But I do want to bring it up now and like to get a conversation started along those lines.
So I've mentioned a name, I don't want to mention the name publicly here, but I've mentioned a name to each of you earlier about an individual that I think could fulfill that role. Is that in line with what you're thinking, that would report directly to the commission?
Let's talk more.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that there's a lot that's got to get worked out. We went through quite a process trying to figure out what to call firefighters at the airport. So, yeah, I want to try to manage that right now, but I do think it's important so that all the little bits and pieces are not just sitting on your desk. And because I know we had a conversation earlier today, and I did not know how many emails that you got daily. And I don't like answering email because it takes up too much of my time. So I do want to make your job easier, and I do want to see us succeed here. So.
Okay, so I'll have an individual conversation with you about this.
So we don't want to do anything right now. So, I mean, I want to be clear on what you asked for, that we're answering what you asked for here.
Well, right now, I guess I'd just like to, a head nod to say, should we look at a project manager this would be pretty much specific to the downtown waterfront infill project. So we've got Chris working on the terminal stuff. I think real estate staff are doing a great job so far with the marine trade stuff, and that's kind of locked in land anyway. So these are just keeping track of all of the somewhat changing picture of the downtown waterfront infill. So, and I'm not sure if that would be a full-time job or not, and if not, then if that person's sitting in the economic development department, then they can fill out some of their time with that work as well. And this kind of, in a way, this kind of gets to a conversation that I recall having with Rob in the last few years, and it was about hiring a person just to work on the waterfront and not an economic development director. And that morphed through different conversations with the city and the county into a different role, which I'm super proud for the port to be able to take that on and be a champion for the entire county there.
So you're proposing someone in addition to the Director of Economic Development?
Boy, if I had my way with the Economic Development Department, there'd be 5 people in there. So I don't know if you have the budget for that, but yeah, so it'd be at least one other person. So I know you told Don that we're not going to give him people, but I think in this case, we might give him a person.
But the position reports to you, so it wouldn't be reporting to Don?
Well, we need to work out how that works, yeah. Okay. Yeah, and that's why I say I don't want to try to manage that right now because there's an org chart, and I think we need to respect the org chart, but I think we also have to accomplish something slightly out of the ordinary there. So.
Well, if you're looking for a head nod, I need more information before I nod affirmative on that.
So the question would be...
is it going to be full-time? Is it part-time? Who do they answer to?
So...
what's the salary? There's a lot of unanswered questions.
The question that I'd like an answer to tonight is, do you believe that we should have a project manager? And would you, yes or no? I guess that's it.
I think there should be someone that manages that project. Yes, I'm not sure it can't be done in-house now.
It would be in-house.
No,
I mean, with
the
existing
folks
staff.
we have now.
I concur with Commissioner McCauley. I think we should look into that to help you. I mean, your plate's pretty full. And you guys will figure it out, whether obviously take your input seriously on whether you think when you do that, we'll figure it out. But I would concur that we should look maybe at doing something like that. So I guess that's direction to look into it, not direction to do it, is what I'm gathering, right?
Yeah, we'll start a conversation, see what we need to, and my best to accomplish it. Yeah.
So the head nod's to look into it.
Well, we're going to start the conversation, yes. We're not hiring anybody. Like I said, if that gets fleshed out the way I'd like it to be fleshed out, and the answer is the way I'd like it to be, then I would leave it to the new commission to hire that person. So certainly not us.
Or if it doesn't work, then we won't do anything.
And that's also a possibility.
It's just basically what we're talking about, moving it forward.
Okay.
It's an idea.
Any other new business?
That's what I gathered out of it.
Any other new business, Commissioner Briscoe? We are adjourned.